Okay, it tells me that I'm live. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hope everybody's doing good tonight. So, let's see. My family's here, and I'm excited because I think my nieces and nephews are watching, and I'm hoping for some good questions from you guys tonight. And another generic username. We actually know his name now. Darren, welcome. Glad you're here. So, and Mr. Nice Kitty, I guess he wanted some of the spotlight. So, okay, welcome everybody. So, let's open in prayer tonight. We're going through a hard time right now. So, just want to pray for everybody who's suffering with coronavirus and everyone who's experiencing job loss or just hardship. So let's just open in prayer. Thank you, Lord, so much. We know that you are with us, that you are with the whole world right now, Lord, and we thank you for your presence despite the things that come against us. And right now, we just ask for your help for the whole world. Lord, you are the one who heals our diseases, heals sicknesses. So right now we pray for everyone who's suffering with coronavirus. We ask you to heal, bless, and restore the whole world. And we ask you to help and restore all those who've been affected economically or in other ways, for all those who are lonely right now, for all those who are suffering loss of family members. And we just ask for your help and strength. Thank you so much, God, and we ask you to just speak to us as we read these words tonight. Lord, would you help us to bring out the points that are important that you want us to know about you and about this moment in history. So thank you so much, God, and please just bless everyone who's joining us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. So, all right, guys. Well, for those who were here last week or not here last week, we'll just review a little bit. We were introduced to Jacob and Esau, or at least we read the story about Jacob stealing his brother's birthright. Well, not stealing, basically like getting his brother's birthright and then also stealing his brother's blessing, tricking his dad. And after he did that, then he had to flee for his life because his brother wanted to kill him. So Esau was coming after him, planning to kill him. So Jacob fled to family in another town. He went to work for his uncle Laban, and he loved Laban's daughter Rachel, and he wanted to marry Rachel. Laban tricked Jacob and gave him Leah, his daughter, instead. And Jacob was like, "What is this? You tricked me into marrying the wrong daughter." And Jacob said, "Don't worry, Laban said, "Don't worry, I'll give you the other one too. Just work another 7 years for me." So where we left off in the story is now Jacob has 2 wives, Leah and Rachel. And he's still working for his uncle. He's agreed to work for his uncle for more years. So we are starting at Genesis chapter 29, verse 31. So I'm reading out of the New International Version. You're welcome to read out of any English translation, and it may be slightly different, and that's fine. And if you have any questions or comments, then please do put them in the chat because we'll discuss things. And there's some, interesting stories here that we're going to read tonight. And I'd love to hear what everybody has to say about it. All right. So let's get started. When the Lord saw, before I start reading this, let me also say, Jacob loved his wife, Rachel. He didn't love Leah so much. Okay, so that's where we're starting. 31. It says, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. But Rachel remained childless. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon. Again, she conceived, and she gave birth to a son. When she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So he was named Levi. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Okay, so we'll stop there and just talk about this. So all of these names that she's giving her children have meanings in the Hebrew. So Reuben, my note, just the notes in my NIV tells me it sounds like the Hebrew for he has seen my misery. Simeon sounds like it probably means the one who hears. Levi sounds like it may be derived from the Hebrew for attached. So she's giving her sons names, and Judah means praise. So she's giving her sons names according to how her hopes and her feelings about what she's going through with her husband, not so much loving her, but hopefully coming to appreciate her through all these sons that she's bearing him. So let's see what anybody else is having to say about this. Do you have any comments or questions so far?
No comments or questions so far.
Okay. Well, I love that this says that when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. So God cared that Leah wasn't loved by her husband. And because she wasn't loved, God decided to just bless her in another way. And right now, Rachel has no children. So let's go on to chapter 30 and start at verse 1. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. Jacob became angry with her and said, am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children? Then she said, here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son. Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, what good fortune! So she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, how happy I am! The women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him six sons. So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, May the Lord add to me another son. Okay, so let's stop there for a minute and let's just talk about, there's quite a lot here. So here now Jacob's got 4 wives because both of his wives are in competition with each other and they're desperate to have children attributed to them. And so they've given Jacob their servants as wives. So now Jacob's got 4 wives bearing children. And so I just want to say a word about that. And I've said this nearly every week because every week we seem to be dealing with this, people having more than one wife, which is not God's ideal. But we're learning that this is a culture, a time and place that's very different from our own. And people are often doing things that God doesn't really like. He doesn't approve of it, but it's just kind of the way things are. So a lot of times God just doesn't really say anything about certain practices, but we're not getting an approval from God that, hey, it's okay, just go ahead and take all these wives. So anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, Tiffany asked what the mandrakes are.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay, good. We were going to get this. Okay, look, I printed this out because mandrakes were used for quite a few things. This is a mandrake fruit. This is a mandrake root. And this is actually poisonous. So it's not really used for just eating straight up, but it was used for quite a few things. It has a narcotic effect. It has a hallucinogenic effect. It was used in magic rituals, and it was also considered good for fertility. So it is most likely that in this case, Rachel is really wanting to get her hands on these mandrakes to help with her fertility issue. So, but it's mandrakes have been used quite a lot. We have in the Roman times, we have evidence that they were using it for like, an anesthetic and putting people to sleep. It'll actually put you into kind of a coma or like a unconscious state for doing surgery. So but it is poisonous and it can kill you. And so you have to be careful with how much of it you ingest. So, yeah, that was a good question. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Samuel asks, if they are poisonous, how do they survive if they ate them?
Great question, Samuel. Yeah, well, it really depends how much you take in. So people were just using them in different ways according to what they wanted to happen. And I mean, I'm sure some people have accidentally taken in too much and poisoned themselves and died. But in the right amount, it'll produce different types of effects that people are looking for. So anybody else?
No, that's it so far. So
okay, so let's see if there's anything else in here we need to discuss. Okay, so we finally have Rachel finally conceiving at the end of this section that we just read. So she's given birth to Joseph, and he's going to become really important. And probably the best story in Genesis. So I look forward to reading about him as we go on. And let's continue. Verse 25. After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." He added, "Name your wages and I will pay them." Jacob said to him, "You know how I have worked for you and how your livestock have fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household?" "What shall I give you?" he asked. "Don't give me anything," Jacob replied, "but if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future whenever you check on the wages you have paid me. Any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored will be considered stolen." "Agreed," said Laban. "Let it be as you have said." That same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, and all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flocks. Okay, let's stop there for a minute just to talk about what's going on, because this story gets a little bit confusing as we continue. But basically, Jacob is saying to Laban, "Look, I want to go back to my homeland." So remember, Jacob fled. He had to flee from his homeland because his brother was trying to kill him. But now he's been working for Laban for many years, and he's like, "No, it's time for me to go home." So he's going to take some time. He's still going to work for Laban, but he wants Laban to start giving him a portion, something for what he's working. He's doing all this work, but he hasn't been well compensated by Laban. So he's saying, "Look, if you just give me all the spotted and streaked and speckled animals, then we'll know for sure what belongs to me and what belongs to you. So just let me have the ones that are kind of like not perfectly white." And Laban says, "Hey, that sounds like a good idea." So he separates them, and then he sends Jacob to continue tending Laban's flocks for a period of time that he agreed to work. So let's continue on with the rest of the story, and this is going to get a little bit strange. Jacob, however, took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed peeled branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban and the strong ones to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks, female and male servants, camels, and donkeys. Okay, so this is a little strange. It seems like Jacob, and I have just read this and reread this and tried to figure out what is Jacob doing here. Like, what is it about stripping off these stripes on the branches and putting it in the water? What does he think this is going to do? And it seems like he has the idea that if the animals mate while seeing these striped branches, that they're going to produce striped and speckled animals. Okay, so either he has this superstitious belief, or maybe he is just doing an act of faith. I don't know what's going on here, but from what I can tell, it seems just he somehow thinks that this is going to help the mating process. And we know that God is with him and God has promised to bless him. But it doesn't really tell us what Jacob's thinking is with this stripping off the bark of these branches and putting them in the water. So do we have any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, we have a question from Bethany. She asked, how did he know they would mate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it says that when they were in heat, which is there's certain times when animals are like in a fertile time, when it's a good time for them to mate. And I'm sure because Jacob was around these animals and tending to them all the time, he was aware of what was happening with the animals. So, any more questions or comments?
That's it so far.
Okay, thank you for your questions. All right, let's go on to chapter 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to the speckled young. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and I saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back there to your native land. Let's stop right there. So now we're finding out some more about this incident of Jacob with the flocks. It seems that God actually appeared to him and told him, look, I'm going to make all of these animals, they're going to be streaked and spotted. And that's so God clearly orchestrated this for Jacob. And it was because Laban had been unfair to Jacob and had never really compensated him for all the work that he did for him. So now Jacob's like, he called his wives out and he was like, okay, look, your father's been cheating me for all these years. Now he's got a bad attitude toward me, and maybe Jacob's getting a little bit afraid, so he's getting ready to leave. So we're going on to verse 17, but I'll stop and ask, are there any questions, comments?
No more questions or comments so far.
Okay. Then yeah. Wait, where are we? Yeah, we're at verse 14. Then Rachel and Leah replied, "Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Now, not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you." Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You have deceived me. You've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You've done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you longed to return to your father's household. But why did you steal my gods?" Okay, let's stop there. So Jacob runs away. He's got his wives and he's run off without letting Laban say goodbye. And Rachel has taken the gods from her father's household, which now these people should be serving one God. This is they have had this blessing passed on to them that they know the creator God, and they are supposed to be worshiping him alone. But they have Rachel's gathered up the household gods from her father's household. And unfortunately, this is a pattern we see throughout the Bible, that people are drawn to worshiping idols. So it was very common during that time for people to have household idols and to call on them for different things. Okay, so Laban's like, "Okay, fine, you ran away, you didn't let me say goodbye, but why did you take my gods?" Any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, there's one comment from Sini Stuff. She says, "I gather the gods were mean to keep the record of their wealth. Can't remember where I read that. But yeah, she said she read somewhere that the gods were a means to keep a record of their wealth." So.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that. Jacob answered, we're on verse 31 now. Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. And if so, take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So he searched, but could not find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. "What is my crime?" he asked Laban. "How have I wronged you that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you." Laban answered Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, "Gather some stones." So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, and Jacob called it Galid. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." That is why it was called Galid. It was also called Mitzpah, because he said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me." Laban also said to Jacob, "Here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early in the morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Okay. So here we see that concept of making a covenant again. And this is something that was done very commonly at that time. Deals between people where they would sacrifice an animal, they would have a meal together, and they would make this oath. They would swear this oath, whatever it was going to be, that, hey, I'm not going to hurt you. You're not going to hurt me. We're going to be, good to each other. And so here they set up a pillar and they said, okay, you don't cross over to my side. I won't cross over to your side. And Laban is sending Jacob away with this covenant. So let's see what's going on the chat.
We have some questions about the household gods.
Okay.
Do we know what they look like? And then that was from another generic username. And then Lisa asked, out of everything that happens in history, why is that significant to include in the Bible? And the stuff about hiding the household gods and the they're sitting on the saddle and all that stuff like that.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. When I read that, I'm like, wow, there's so many details that we just don't have through history. Like, this is kind of a strange incident to have this detail recorded. So I have the same question you do. And for Darren, I don't know. It doesn't really give us any information about these gods, but I'm sure we could look up and see what were the gods that they worshipped in that region at that time. But yeah, there's no really information given about it, so it would really just be guessing. Okay. Let's go on to chapter 32. Okay, Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I am sending this message to my lord that I may find favor in your eyes." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. And then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." Okay, so wow. Jacob is scared to death. He has no idea if his brother is still ready to kill him. It's been 20 years now. And so Jacob's returning, and he hears this report that Esau is coming out to meet him with 400 men. Now, that does not sound good. That sounds quite scary. So Jacob is having a little bit of a freak out, and he's trying to figure out what he should do. So he's dividing up his people. He's saying, all right, this group over here, if he attacks you guys, then these guys will run. And he's dividing up everything so that they can make a getaway if Esau comes and attacks them. And he's crying out to God, like, "God, you told me to go back. You told me to go back to my homeland. And now I'm in danger. Save me from this." So, do we have comments?
Mike commented about describing the covenant. He said, that when people would make a covenant, he says, they would cut the animal in half, hang it close, and walk between so the blood would touch, both indicating that if they broke the pledge, they should be killed like the animal. The pledge was serious.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And it was very important at that time to have that kind of serious deal, because there was no police force to call if somebody was attacking you. You couldn't call 911. So it was good to have allies and to know that you had a strong covenant, that you had a strong promise, that there was this oath between you and your ally. And so there just wasn't a law and order like we have in civilized countries today. So, okay, anybody else?
That's it.
Okay, so let's see what's going to happen to Jacob. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Who do you belong to and where are you going? And who owns all these animals in front of you?' then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us.'" He also instructed the second, the third, and all the others who followed the herds. "You are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and be sure to say, 'Your servant Jacob is coming behind us.'" For he thought, "I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me." So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Okay, this is very interesting encounter here. So Jacob sends some gifts ahead to Esau, and hoping that he's going to soften Esau up and Esau won't want to kill him. And then he sends his wives separate from him. And then Jacob is alone, and all night he's wrestling with a man. And Jacob won't let go of the man. And then he says, "Okay, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." And then we have this encounter where Jacob has seen the face of God. So here we have another appearance of God in kind of a strange way. And we have God giving Jacob a new name, Israel, which is he has struggled with God, wrestled with God. So it's kind of an interesting story. What do you guys have to say about it? Silence? Okay.
Yeah, no, nothing so far.
Okay. We'll keep going, but if anybody has comments about that, then we'll go back and talk about that more later. Chapter 33. Jacob meets Esau. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran out to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me and at the pace of the children until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." "But why do that?" Jacob asked. Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord." So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. After Jacob came from Padan Aram, he arrived safely in the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver, he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elo Israel. So, and that means the God of Israel, or mighty is the God of Israel. So, okay, this is Jacob is happily embracing his brother. They seem to have this great embrace and they're weeping and they seem happy to see each other. But you can tell Jacob's still a little scared because he's still trying to get rid of his brother as fast as he can. Esau's saying, "Hey, come on, we'll travel together." And Jacob's like, no, it's okay. I'm moving way too slow for you. You go ahead. Just, we'll be all right. Don't worry about us. So Jacob clearly wants to get rid of his brother, still maybe afraid that, his brother could secretly be plotting to kill him. And I think that's kind of one of the things that this whole thing of deception, one of the reasons it can become hard to trust people. If you've lived a life of deceiving people and deception, then you kind of expect that from other people. And we see that Jacob has spent his early life doing some big deceptions, and now he's getting the same thing in return, or even doesn't even know if Esau is being sincere with him. So he's kind of living out his own thing that he started. So any questions, comments there?
Yeah, we had some comments from the earlier stuff.
Okay.
It says that Lisa asked, if it says the man couldn't overpower Jacob, if he was God, how could that be?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I don't really know. And this is we have some strange appearances of God that people experience. And often we wonder if this is an appearance of Jesus, pre-incarnate Jesus, that Jacob might be experiencing. And so in whatever way, it's hard to understand how God is appearing to him in this human form. But I'm sure the Almighty God, if he really wanted to overpower Jacob, he could have. So, but maybe God was enjoying the fight. So that's my best answer, but I really don't know. Good question, though.
And on the same topic, Mike comments and says, later, Jesus said, no man has seen God's face. This event, meaning the wrestling with God, and the Moses tent of meeting experiences are strange expressions of seeing God.
Yeah, actually, that's I think we see several times, many times throughout Scripture, where people are seeing God in one form or another. And we do have, like you're bringing up the incident of Moses, and it specifically says that God spoke to Moses face to face like a man speaks with his friend. So, and then, but we have in another place where it says, like, no one can see the face of God and live. So I think that the way that we can understand that is to not be over literal in our interpretation. We can understand that Moses and Jacob here were seeing God in some form. They were seeing a form of God, but they weren't seeing all that there is to see of who God is. There's much more to God than what they were seeing in that moment. And even when the Lord was speaking to Moses face to face, Moses was seeing the Lord, seeing a form of the Lord, but not seeing all that there is to see of the Lord, which is probably much more glorious than the human eye in mortal form can take in. So that's how I understand it. Anybody else?
Yeah, Cindy Stuff chimes in on the same topic and says, the pre-incarnate Jesus is who I thought it was. Plus, God only touched his hip and crippled him. Lol. So yeah, like his power. She's saying, like, you know, that's how you could see it's like God, because he just and like is dislocated his hip. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like apparently there was a lot of reserved power there, just a touch of the hip. So produced a limp for good. Yep. Okay, well, let's see. Do we have time to read one more chapter? I think we do. So let's see. Chapter 34. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what had happened. They were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it." Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay you whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife." Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to him, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. "These men are friendly toward us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters, and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised, as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms, and they will settle among us." All the men who went out of the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city out in the fields. They carried off all their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites and the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" So, okay, we have this terrible incident with Dinah, and then these guys in this land try to make a deal with Jacob and his clan, and they say, "All right, guys, we'll do it if you circumcise all your males." So while they're still in pain from the circumcision, Jacob's sons go and they kill all the males. So we're seeing that this is a culture very different than ours. So they've gone and wiped out everybody that belongs to these guys that were the leaders of the city. So kind of a rough thing. They took revenge on them, and Jacob wasn't happy about it. He was like, "Now we are going to be hated by all the people in this land now that we've done this." And they were like, "Hey, nobody treats our sister that way." So they were doing this thing, standing up for their sister, and it kind of just set the stage like nobody better mess with us or any of our people, or same thing's going to happen to you. And that's kind of the way it was during that time. So, any further comments?
No, that's it so far.
Okay. Well, great, guys. It was really fun doing this tonight, and I look forward to continuing the story of Jacob and finishing that up next week with you guys. And I hope everyone has a good week. And if you have any prayer requests, you can leave them here in the chat as long as it stays on, and then or leave it in the comment section, and Jeremy and I will pray for you. So glad everybody could make it tonight. And thanks for all your questions, comments. And I always go back and read the chat replay so I can see what everybody was saying. So thanks, and God bless you guys. Talk to you soon.